We have a compelling crisis of public safety with human trafficking, drug trafficking, sex trafficking coming up through the border. This is not make-believe. This is something that we live with every day as border sheriffs. So we applaud the efforts of the current administration to secure our border. It's long overdue. And those who would argue that we do not have a crisis on our southern border need to come to my part of the world and see what's really going on.
As the men and women of the front lines of Border Patrol deal with an overwhelming number of migrants trying to enter the United States, they continue to ask for more resources and for Congress to take action.
But is reform actually possible on this incredibly hot political issue? Two lawmakers on opposite sides of the aisle say that they have actually come up with a solution. In an op-ed published in the New York Times, Republican Congressman Peter King and Democratic Congressman Tom Suozzi, who both represent districts in Long Island, laid out a bipartisan plan. It would, among other things, create a path to citizenship, offer some temporary protections, fund physical barriers, and provide aid to the Northern Triangle countries. Congressman Suozzi joins us now from Capitol Hill to expand on this proposal. He is a member of the House Ways and Means Committee and previously served on the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, Crystal. Thanks so much for having me on.
Tell us more about what you and Congressman King have in mind.
You know, we both come at this from different perspectives. I've been working on this for 25 years since I was mayor of my hometown, Glen Cove, Long Island. I look at it from immigrants' rights and immigration reform. Peter comes from the perspective of having been a member of Congress for almost 25 years, but also having served as the former chairman of Homeland Security. And between the two of us, we said we have to find some common ground. People have been fighting about this issue literally for 30 years and have never been able to actually do what we need to do, which is protect the human beings that are in this country, some for 10, 20, 30 years, while at the same time securing our border. And the only way we're going to do that is to find common ground. The idea that the president is talking about now of getting more fierce and being more strict and coming down harder, it's just not going to work. It hasn't worked thus far. It's got to be a working together, recognizing that both sides have some valid points to make and finding common ground and working together.
Okay, Congressman, so we're going to have 100,000 people that will have showed up at the border and been apprehended for illegal crossing in the last month. That's what the estimates are. We should find out in the next few days what the exact number is. What do we do about that?
Well, it's the same thing. I mean, we have to. Why are so many people coming right now? Well, people are coming for a couple different reasons. Number one, their conditions are desperate in the Northern Triangle countries, Honduras, Guatemala, El Salvador. They have this miserable life where people are getting killed by gangs. They have horrible poverty. They have this horrible way of life. They're trekking these long distances with their families under dangerous circumstances to come to a country where the president is saying, don't come to our country. Now, who would do that? They're doing it because their lives are so desperate. So we need to do a couple things. Number one, we need to deal with the people that are in our country now and provide them, some with paths to citizenships, others with some protections, stop pushing people underground. Number two, we need to secure our border so that people can't come in illegally and have to follow a process and procedure. Number three, we need to strengthen that process and procedure to make sure that it can handle the numbers of people that are coming here and process them in a way that people don't fall through the cracks. And number four, we need to deal with our neighbors to the south to make sure that they get their acts together where their countries are not so desperate that people are fleeing there in these huge numbers.
As you know, Congressman, the president has cut off aid to the Northern Triangle countries, which to me is very counterproductive. There's also new reporting suggesting There's also new reporting suggesting he would like to reinstate the family separation policy that we had previously at the border. What makes you feel that you can have a good faith dialogue or negotiation with folks that would offer those kinds of ideas?
Well, it's not easy to do. In this current environment, it's not easy to do. But what we're doing now is not working. With one side with this dramatic bluster of, we're going to be fiercer, we're going to be tougher, we're going to crack down harder. They've been doing that for 2.5 years under this administration. It's gotten worse. And the other side of just saying, there's not a problem, everything's fine. Neither one's going to work. We've got to find common ground. So under our proposal, we're saying let's protect 5 million people. And those 5 million people will have to pay a $2,000 fee. 5 million times $2,000 is $10 billion. Let's use that $10 billion to provide more physical structures along the border, $4.3 billion. And let's provide another $4.3 billion to try and help the Northern Triangle countries, El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras. Let's provide more technology to secure our borders with radar and the like. Let's have better ports of entry. Let's have more immigration judges. Let's do more with humanitarian aid. Let's do both sides of the equation, and let's work together to reform the system.
Congressman, how is this proposal, this plan you have in mind, markedly different, or is it different from the basics of the Gang of Eight amnesty bill that Marco Rubio and others were trying to push through some years back?
It's very similar in its intent, and we need to get back to that again. You know, that passed the Senate. We couldn't get it even brought up in the House. We need to go back to that type of thinking, because most people who look at this rationally saw that proposal by the Gang of Eight back in 2013 as being a very reasonable thing to do. And we need to get beyond all this vitriol and bluster and people yelling and screaming at each other, and we need to find some common ground to actually solve the problem. It's the only thing that's ever solved anything in this country. It's the only thing that will solve things now. People need to work together. And listen, Peter King and I couldn't be further apart on this issue during the course of our careers. And we saw that, you know, Long Island has a lot of people, a lot of newcomers from Central and South America. We have a huge population of unaccompanied minors that have been brought there. This is a very big issue for us that we've been dealing for a long time. As mayor of my hometown in 1994, I built the first gathering spot for day workers from Central and South America. Instead of gathering on street corners, it was an organized place that if people couldn't get a job for the day, they could learn to stay and speak English, learn a job skill, or if they did go to work and did get paid, there'd be somebody to advocate on their behalf. I had the Catholic Church helping. I had La Fuerza Unida. I had other local organizations. And those same guys that were on the street corners are now living very productive lives. Well, back then, it was controversial to do that kind of thing. But we need to figure out both sides of...
Are you frustrated with Democratic leadership on this issue? Do you feel like they haven't offered solutions that are up to the scale of the challenge?
I think that the Democrats have focused mainly on the one side of providing a path to citizenship for Dreamers and for TPS and for other undocumented persons. And they've also talked about doing some of the more modern things regarding technology and border security, as well as helping El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras. But they haven't focused as much on the physical borders that the Republicans are asking for, that the president's asking for. We need to find a little bit of both to find a happy medium in order to move forward. It's never that one side has the answer, my way or the highway. It historically doesn't prove to be a solution. So we need to get the best of both worlds and find some common ground. And the problem is nobody trusts each other. Peter King and I, who are very different from each other, but have been on Long Island together for many years, have learned to trust each other and to try and say things that we maybe couldn't say to our base, and talk to each other and try to find common ground.
All right, Congressman, thank you so much for your time, sir. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Buck, Crystal.
Have a great day, sir. Next up on Rising, after a lengthy investigation, a major decision is expected in the U.S. uranium trade. The outcome could change how the U.S. obtains that precious resource.
I sat down with the Executive Vice President of Uranium Energy Corps. He explains how importing uranium could potentially create a national security risk. He says it's better to produce uranium on U.S. soil. That when Rising continues.